Mangalam Srimadaatatam Bhuvi Grananti Ye Bhurida Janaha. So we were discussing Siram Krishna's conversation with Vijay Krishna Goswami. So that conversation is going on, and Vijay Krishna Goswami, as you all know, was the founder of a new wing of the Brahmo Samaj, or a separate Brahmo Samaj, which was known as Sadharan Brahmo Samaj, which had separated from the main Brahmo Samaj. And he was a preacher. Initially, he was, I think, they had paid preachers or so called secular preachers. So, naturally, preaching was part of their uh, profession or job rather than something that they did out of their own voluntary choice. But because he was employed initially by Brahmo Samaj, he continued that preaching just as anybody would do, anybody would follow a particular profession. So, can you see me properly? Hello?
Yes, Maharaj, we are fine. You're fine, Maharaj. Yeah.
Yeah, you're fine,
Yes,
no? Okay, okay,
yes, Maharaj, it's fine.
okay. Because I'm not able to, the speaker's view is not there. So I'm seeing everybody on the top, but not, I mean, I'm one of the many, So 1 minute. Together mode or a speaker's view I've done. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah,
I
I
No,
have changed to
it,
speaker view now.
it's on speaker view only, Maharaj.
is it? But
Yes,
Yeah.
I
Maharaj.
am not able to see that speaker's view. Anyway, okay. So, so now Vijay Krishna Goswami is getting some instructions from Sri Ramakrishna because he wants him. He knows by nature he is very spiritual, and he is very Thakur is very keen that he does not take his preaching so seriously that he ignores his own spiritual practices. So he is trying to impress upon him, you preach, but as a humble servant of God. That would be a much better way to go about doing your duties. And for that reason, in this specific case, Sri Ramakrishna seems to be telling him that one should not have the feeling, as Sri Ramakrishna himself, whenever he spoke, he used to either say, it is the Divine Mother who says this through him. He never used to say I, using a personal pronoun to indicate indicate himself. He said this body, meaning that this is an instrument and mother is using this instrument to preach her own ideas. I am doing nothing. So that ego should not be prominent when somebody is doing a job as such as religious teaching. To give that kind of instruction to Vijay Krishna Goswami in specially, he is instructing him by saying, if you preach without receiving a direct command, people won't listen. That was one of his complaints, that Vijay Krishna Goswami and all others, they were very aggressive preachers. In the sense, when Brahmo Samaj was founded, maybe it was started with a desire to enroll as many members as possible because they felt, they had a feeling that Hinduism, people are leaving Hinduism through the influence of other foreign religions, and people were, some of them were even becoming atheists, swearing by science. So they found that it is their duty. The reformers always feel that it is their duty to put people on the right track. But Sri Ramakrishna wants to say that to these aggressive preachers or so called professional preachers, that preaching should not be, it should just be part of your sadhana. And if mother allows and gives the command, then she will make you speak things about spirituality, and that will have a greater influence than just pure preaching, which is done as a profession. So that's why he's saying such teaching carries no force. First of all, one must attain God by practicing religious disciplines or by any other means. Only after receiving his command can one teach. So one can become a teacher in the real sense of the term, and if it has to be very effective, and only an avatara or a teacher who has received the divine command can teach humanity. That is what Sri Ramakrishna is hinting. So it's not given to everybody to become an world teacher or a Jagat Guru, because if anybody feels that he is a Jagat Guru, he should deserve that place and deserve that authority. That authority has to be given by none other than God or the Divine Mother. So he is giving a wonderful example by saying that in Kamarpukur there is a pond known as Haldar Pukur. Every day people used to defecate on its banks. Those who came to the pond in the morning would shout at the offenders with foul language, and in general it created a great fuss. Naturally, if you are taking bath and somebody comes to defecate or do their ablutions there, it's a big nuisance. But since there was one very big pond, there are of course smaller ponds in Kamarpukur, but Haldarpukur was the biggest one. So naturally people found it convenient, and people nearby, instead of using other ponds, they used the pond in which many people used to bathe to do other things other than just take a bath. So when this nuisance was being created and everybody was shouting at each other, the banks would be, nobody would listen, and they used to come and the banks would be covered with filth once again. Then at last a government worker decided to take matters in his own hand and put up a notice: stop defiling the banks. All offenders will be prosecuted. So it's something like a government order. When it becomes a law, then law is enforced. Then the fear of police or fear of law getting arrested, then everything stopped. So after the sign was posted, nobody defecated there again. So Sri Ramakrishna used to say that this kind of authority, it is only when the legal authority or the police authority enforce their command, or maybe they put up some kind of instruction, mandatory instruction or mandatory warning, then only people listen. So Sri Ramakrishna says, similarly, after receiving a command from God, one can be a religious teacher and give lectures anywhere. He who receives God's authority also receives power from him. Only then he can perform the difficult task of a religious preceptor. So when a simple, then Sri Ramakrishna doesn't stop here, because he wants to impress upon Vijay Krishna Goswami, whom Sri Ramakrishna felt was taking his preaching duty a little bit more seriously than doing sadhana. So he seems to be telling him, first do some sadhana, get some kind of realization, and then when you get God's authority, then you start preaching. If you just preach aggressively as other preachers do, professional preachers do, nobody is going to listen to you. It requires some kind of um, uh, spiritual experience and spiritual authority more than experience to really create an impact on the minds of others, especially when people approach you. uh, the teaching will have more impact if you have some kind of divine authority given by the Lord. So he says, when a simple tenant went to court against a big landlord, people knew there had to be a big powerful man behind him. Perhaps another big landlord was fighting the case through this man. Man is insignificant. He cannot perform the duty of a religious teacher without receiving direct power from God. So, saying this, uh, he's looking at Vijay, and Vijay is asking this question: Sir, don't the teachings of Brahmo Samaj liberate people? Because that's the enthusiasm with which they go about preaching. Like any other preacher, the foreign preachers, preaching was an idea which the Brahmos may have absorbed from the Christian tradition. As you all know, Brahmo Samaj was a combination of different religious ideas which were prevailing at that time. They took a few ideas from Upanishads, they took a few ideas from the way Islam was being taught, they took a few ideas from Christianity, and they might have taken up this idea of preaching, this idea of enabling certain professional preachers who joined the Brahmo Samaj as members, and they gave them the authority to just go and aggressively preach the Brahmo doctrines and try to get as many members as possible. So, which they found or which they thought would liberate people. So, reflecting that idea of the founders, Vijay Krishna Goswami also thought that this is the only way you can reform people. But Sri Krishna now replies that it is Sachidananda alone who is the Guru, and it is he who liberates. One who has that idea and acts in that particular way, thinking that I am just an agent, I am just passing on what the Divine Lord, uh, whatever I got as experience by meditating on the Divine Lord, if you pass on, then it will have some effect. So he says, how is it possible for one man to liberate another from the bondage of the world? You people say that they will get liberated. How can they get liberated? Mukti is not such an easy thing. How is it possible for one man to liberate another from the bondage of the world? Only he who is the creator of the world bewitching Maya can liberate man from Maya. So Sri Krishna used to say that avidya Maya and vidya Maya, there are two types of Maya. One takes you towards bondage, another takes you away from bondage. So it is though Maya is supposed to be world bewitching in the sense it can put you into deeper and deeper bondage, but there is another aspect of Maya, the positive aspect, which Sri Krishna termed as Vidya Maya, which can take you away from this getting stuck or getting uh, bound to this world. So he says it is this Vidya Maya can free you from the clutches of the Avidya Maya, the world bewitching Maya. And who can do that except for Sachidananda Guru? The Guru who acts as a conduit or a channel through which Sachidananda, who is the Ishvara or the Ishta, acts and imparts that power. He says, except for Sachidananda Guru, there is no refuge. How is it possible for those who have neither realized God nor received His command, who have not become powerful with His power, to liberate an embodied soul from the bondage of the world? So, even a great guru like Swami Vivekananda, once when he was in Thousand Island Park, he was tired of mixing with the large number of people who used to attend his lectures. And a stage came when he said, I'll just quietly go to a corner and go to a retreat myself from this crowd and then go silently, take a few disciples, say 10 or 12 disciples, and discuss spirituality with them or try to transfer something concrete, so that I can mold them to become real spiritual people. So, with that intention, he decided to stay at Thousand Island Park, the Vivekananda Cottage as it is known now, a beautiful retreat where he wanted earnest souls who really wanted to make some spiritual progress, not take up spirituality as a part time thing. We do many things. We and spirituality is just a pastime for most of us. That's why it becomes imperative that when uh, disciples take to their guru, they have to be as intense as possible and focused on what they get from the guru as it comes in a tradition. So Siram Swami Vivekananda, even a great Yugacharya as Swami Vivekananda, told when these 12 disciples started coming one after another, two women devotees, two lady devotees, they came. It was raining very heavily outside, and in that thunderstorm, they somehow managed. It was a very difficult place to access. There was no communication, but somehow these two ladies were so keen, lady disciples, young lady disciples. They were so much intense in their pursuit of spirituality that they did not mind the hardship to travel such a long distance and come to where Swami Vivekananda was supposed to give some spiritual instructions to a select group of people. So one day there was a knock, and Swami Vivekananda opened the door to find out who has come in this unearthly hour, and such a bad storm is there outside. Who has knocked? And when he opens, he sees two women devotees, two young women who have come, and they were frantic. They were struggling. I mean, they were very keen to become part of this group and received some direct spiritual instructions. Then, when he asked them, "Who are you and why have you come?" they tell something which Swami Vivekananda was really surprised. Coming from two Western women, two young women, they said, "We have come to you." The statement or the words they uttered were most significant. They simply said they were so overwhelmed with that yearning and desire to get some tangible spirituality from Swami Vivekananda. They said, "We have come here as we would have come if we had come to Jesus Christ." I mean, they were so keen that they found a prophet in Swami Vivekananda. And he said, "We are so keen to receive spirituality, and if Jesus Christ were alive, how intense would have been our dispassion, our yearning to see him and to get some kind of spiritual support from him." So he says, "We have come to you as we would have come if Jesus Christ were alive." And then Swami Vivekananda says, uh, and then Swami Vivekananda tells them, "How I wish I had the power of Jesus Christ to liberate you all, or to deliver you from the bondage of the world. Had I got the power as my master had to liberate people at touch, I would have done it." He was so impressed by their devotion and their yearning to get some tangible spirituality, some tangible spiritual experience. So that is true yearning which makes one aspirant, a sadhaka, aspire for spiritual transformation. So that is the yearning with which a disciple is supposed to approach the guru. And only when that happens, and if the guru is ready, the transformation takes place. As Naren went and to his own guru, who had the command from the Divine Mother to liberate him instantly, he goes and then says, "Can you have you seen God?" He says, "Not only have I seen God, but I can show it to you, and I see him in a much more intense sense than you see other people." So that was the experience of seeing God that Naren was keen to have. He had read enough of books, he had perhaps heard enough of preachers, he had been to Brahmo Samaj, he had been to so many other institutions and read many books, hoping to get some direct spiritual experience. So when he comes to Sri Ramakrishna, he he doesn't want to get disappointed. He wants somebody who had that authority to give that direct spiritual experience. So he comes and then he gets that wonderful answer because Sri Ramakrishna had that divine command, that divine command from the Lord that to liberate people at wish, liberate people at their wish. So that's why he says, how is it possible? Sri Ramakrishna is saying, how is it possible uh, for those who have neither realized God nor received His command, who have not become powerful with His power to liberate an embodied soul from the bondage of the world? So then he gives another beautiful example. He says, one day I was going from the Panchavati to the Jauthala, the pine ground. Jauthala means the pine grove. There were so many pine trees there in Dakshineshwar. And he was going from Panchavati to this Jauthala to answer the call of nature. And suddenly he heard a bullfrog croaking loudly. So he's telling what he saw. And you see, every incident, everything that he saw in nature taught him some beautiful idea which he conveyed to his disciple. I thought it must have been seized by a snake. So, after quite some time, when I was returning, I heard the frog still croaking. So, Sri Ramakrishna was curious. You see, this is how he learnt his lessons, not from books or from hearing talks. His idea was that one should, Swami Vivekananda's idea was that his guru got commands or learnt all his lessons directly from nature. And that is why his teachings are so natural, so original, so creative. So he sees a frog and the frog is croaking, and then he knew that in those parts of in Dakshineshwar especially, there were a lot of snakes who used to devour these frogs. So seeing they are mostly non-poisonous snakes, and they just uh, try to grab these small toads or frogs and then swallow them up and digest them. So unfortunately, this frog was quite big, and it was still croaking. So I heard the frog still croaking, so I looked to see what was the matter. And I saw that the non poisonous snake had seized it. It could neither release the frog nor swallow it. There was no end to the frog's agony because it was caught in the mouth, trying to struggle to get out. But at the same time, if it had swallowed it, then at least the frog would have died. But now both are in agony. Both the snake, he can neither swallow nor is he going to leave the frog, and the frog is stuck in his mouth. So then Sri Ramakrishna suddenly thought, I said to myself, had it been a cobra, the frog would have been silent after three croaks. But it had been seized by a non poisonous snake. So the snake and the frog were both suffering. The moral of this story, and what Sri Ramakrishna is trying to convey, is that if the Guru is powerful, he can liberate the soul, liberate the disciple in a few attempts. Just one bite is enough. The ego of an embodied soul ends up with just three cries if one has a real teacher. So that is what he is trying. That means the word used is, if there is a Sadguru, then the ego of the disciple can easily be crushed. And it is only when the ego is crushed, as we discuss in our Friday class on Raj Yoga, it is avidya which gives rise to asmita. So, when this asmita or the ego continues to persist, in spite of all the efforts, the asmita doesn't go away, and the disciple has to struggle. And if the guru is not able to remove that ego and uh, try and liberate the disciple, then it is difficult both for the guru and the disciple. So, if the guru is unripe, both the guru and the disciple undergo a lot of suffering. The disciple doesn't get rid of his ego or bondage to the world. Falling into the hands of an unripe guru, the disciple does not attain liberation. So, he is warning him that don't be very keen to think that by your uh, uh, by your efforts, you cannot liberate anybody. However much you try, you cannot liberate everybody. Just as a cobra, in one or two bites, he can finish off a frog. That means effectively he can silence the ego of the disciple within no time and put him on the right track. But if one does not have the capacity, if one is not empowered enough, then both the guru and the disciple will suffer. So, in a way, he's trying to tell Vijay Krishna Goswami that don't go about just preaching, and don't think the people who listen to you or become members of Brahmo Samaj, they will really hanker after God. They will do so if you have the license or you have the mm, power of the Lord within you, which enables the people to realize, to take this spiritual teaching very seriously. One of the reasons why these spiritual teachings, even if the Guru persists in telling again and again and again, it doesn't have an effect. But if Sri Ramakrishna says, even a person like Swami Vivekananda says, unfortunately, uh, we cannot, he cannot, I mean, Swami Vivekananda was speaking about himself that he cannot liberate a person even if he wants to. So he tells these two women who had come to him that if you permit me, I rarely use the power which was given, which he had, but he had hardly used because Sri Ramakrishna had warned him not to use it. He had a power where he could read the minds, read the samskaras of a disciple and then give them proper instructions. But he was so keen that every individual should have the liberty to follow one's own path, that did not want to impose his ideas on his disciples. But he said, in case you trust me, then give me the permission to read your mind so that I can guide you or find out the path which is good for you. And then for a moment he just closed his eyes, meditated, and found out the right path for these people. And after finding the right path, he gave them certain specific instructions to be practiced. So that is how a true guru or a true uh, guru who believes that he is the conduit through which the power of the Lord, the power of the Ishta, is being shared with his disciple. And in that case, both the guru and the disciple stand to benefit. So that is chapter 5. Now we come to the chapter 6, where M is beginning with a verse from Bhagavad Gita. It's a part of the verse, it's not the full verse. So that this verse says, Ahankara vimud atma karta aham iti manyate. So Bhagavad Gita in the third chapter we have this 27th verse, which says that ahankara vimud atma means deluded by egotism, one thinks that I am the doer. So even Lord Krishna is telling Arjuna that don't let your ego dominate you. Don't think that you are the doer. Even Sri Ramakrishna himself, who had received the divine command, never thought for a moment that I am doing this. He used to, by way of instruction, he used to tell all his disciples, you see, I don't know anything. It's the Divine Mother who is making me do all these things. So if that feeling is there, then the the teaching becomes effective because you are directing your disciple to the Lord. You are directing your disciple and you are instructing the disciple that I am just conveying what I heard from the past masters, what I heard from my Ishta, what Sri Ramakrishna spoke. That is why we have to acknowledge even a great spiritual teacher, a great avatara like Sri Ramakrishna, used to attribute or ascribe his teachings to from his different gurus he had in his own life. He had so many gurus. Then he used to say, oh, Totapuri said this. Or even if some ordinary person sometimes mentioned certain things and he used that idea or he spoke about those things, he would attribute it to the person who spoke it first. He used to say, I heard from such and such a person. So that ego was not there, that I am instructing you and you have to listen. We have to have that uh, concern, or we have to understand that when if we want to be the real channels through which the Ishvara's or the Lord's power or God's power should flow, then we have to become as humble as possible. This humility enables you to pass on the message of the Ishta who is within the heart. That is why one is instructed, when one gives instruction, one is instructed to merge the Guru in the Ishta. That's the real significance of this particular teaching of Sri Ramakrishna when he says it is the Guru who teaches. So, all the instructions that are given by the human Guru, where he says that you may begin with meditation on the Guru, but then finally you have to merge him because it is the Satchidananda alone who is the Guru. She is the Guru Maharaj, as we call him. So, his power, even if it is flowing through a channel, it is the power of the Lord that is important, not the channel. Sri Ramakrishna used to also give another example where he used to say that on the terrace you see so many different spouts. Spouts is through a ornament on the side of the building, on the top of the near the terrace, from where the water which is accumulated on the terrace used to normally come out. So they were prepared in different ways. They were constructed in different shapes. Sometimes the shape of a elephant, or sometimes the spout would look like the mouth of a cow or a horse, and instead of a simple pipe they used to make decorative spouts. So people or children, when they saw, they thought that the water is coming out of the mouth of the lion or the mouth of a horse or the mouth of a cow, but actually the water is the water that has been collected because of the rain. So Sachidananda's power is flowing through these channels. And if the Guru thinks that he is a mere channel, then the teaching becomes effective. All he does is says the Ishta, the power of the Ishta, which is flowing through the Guru, that is more important. And it is not the particular instructions. The instructions may be given by the Guru, but they have to have some connection. That is why Swami Vivekananda used to say, I am nothing. It is Sri Ramakrishna's wonderful thoughts, the Upanishads, which we are just telling you. It's the same universal thoughts which have come to us as a tradition. We are saying the same thing. I speak nothing but the Upanishads. That's what Swamiji said. He didn't say I say this or I say this. Unlike the preachers who ascribe all the teachings to themselves and they expect you to listen to them. But Swamiji and true gurus will never say that. They will always say that Sachidananda alone is the guru and we are just channels through which the message of the master, the message of the Ishta is flowing. So Vijay is saying now after this, the subheading that is given is liberation or God realization comes as soon as Maya or the wheel of ego goes. As soon as Asmita goes, the avidya that was covering the true nature of man. Man by nature is pure Brahman, pure Atman. But he is covered with this layer of avidya. And then that avidya branches into asmita, that is ego. And when the ego comes, we have raga, dvesha, and then clinging to life, clinging to the gross things, that is known as abhinivesha. So Patanjali has put it so beautifully in his Raj Yoga, in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, that it is Purusha by its himself. The divine nature of our soul remains intact in spite of the avidya, in spite of the asmita. Avidya manifests first it as ego, and that ego gives rise to raga, intense attachment to the things we like, and dvesha, intense hatred or uh, some kind of hatred towards the thing that I don't like. So all our experiences can be divided into these three, which come out of the ego, which come out of asmita. So as soon as the wheel of ego goes, your raga, dvesha, and abhinivesha, that is that intense desire to cling to the gross body, that is known as asmita, the desire to live, the fear of death. So all our problems come to these three causes, but they have their root in asmita. That's why Sri Ramakrishna is giving a beautiful answer now. Vijay is asking, why are we bound like this? If we are free, if Sachidananda alone is our Guru and he is already seated within our heart, then why can't we experience him? Why can't we see God? Why are we bound like this? There should be a cause. Then Sri Ramakrishna says, the very ego of man is Maya. Because Vedanta normally ascribes it to Maya, and then we also say, oh, it is Maya. We are all enmeshed by Maya. We are bound by Maya. But what is this Maya? How does it manifest? It comes in the form of ego. The ego does not let the light of the Atman flow and not let it covers everything. It covers our eternal existence, Sat. It covers our consciousness, makes it cloudy. We don't see things as we should see them. And it also covers the bliss, the Ananda. Sat, Chit, and Ananda, who alone is the Guru, who alone is the power, after reaching whom? With the help of the Vidya Maya, that is the counter force to this egoism. The egotism wields everything. All trouble cease when this I-ness dies. So how does this I-ness die? We have this wonderful discussion on Wednesday, which I have borrowed the title from Revered Swami Sir Ranganathanji Maharaj, who used to say that Vedanta is the science of human possibilities. Now, what are the human possibilities? That's the idea. To understand the human possibilities, we have to understand what this ego is. Human possibilities are not the skills that we develop. So that's why Vedanta is the science of human possibilities. And if we try to understand what are the possibilities that human being can achieve, he can achieve many things. He has raga for certain academic subjects. He has raga for certain professions. He want to excel. We want our children to excel in certain subjects. and then we say whether he likes it or not, we want to force our children and make him like certain things and tell, oh, don't do these things, these are not good. So we create this raga and dvesha, some kind of hatred or some kind of preconceived notion that this is not good. So that is how the lower prakriti works, the lower ego works. It creates so many likes in our life, and it creates so many dislikes also. When a child is born, he accepts everything, whatever the child's mother gives, he accepts. But as he grows, either we spoil him or the peers and the teachers and the people around him, the whole nature gives him choices and says that he decides his ego. As his ego becomes more stronger and stronger, the avidya, the ignorance, becomes deeper. When the asmita or the ego becomes strong, that is what Sri Ramakrishna is telling. The egotism has veiled everything. That has clouded our vision. We can't see Satchidananda because of that. And what does that ego do? It tells, oh, you like this, I want this. So there are so many list of wants, list of things that I like, list of things I don't like, and I run after the things I like. I try to avoid the things, but it doesn't happen that way. So when I get a large number of things or events happen which I don't like, then the abhinivesh or the fear of existence comes. I don't like to be sick. I don't like to lose my job, but these things come. So you get dvesha, you get hatred. You feel, you start complaining that God is not kind. And because it is our likes and dislikes which have clouded our vision, and we are ignorantly holding on to that. And if that happens, then our that happens only because the ego makes us attached to certain things that we like, and uh, detached certain things which we don't like. So we try to hate it. We just try to avoid it, and we are not able to do anything when those things come. I hate it, but it comes to me. I don't like to be sick. I don't like to be weak. I don't like to fail, but these things come. Then the Vidya Maya says that you have to be a sthita prajna, whether you like it or not. Just don't lead a life where there are strong likes and dislikes. Accept whatever comes and negotiate your life in this world. That is what the science of human possibilities. Vedanta is a science of human possibilities, because till now we have been taught by our parents, our teachers, that we have to go after certain things that I like, and we have to avoid certain things which we don't like, and that is how we make our career, and that is how we become successful in life. But life does not go like that. No matter how much we try, we always don't get what we like. We may wish that tomorrow I should get these things. But even if we work hard, sometimes the world slips away from us. And sometimes, even if we don't like, certain things come to us and we feel, why have we been put in this position? Why do we have to endure all these things? Yeah, because I don't like it, I don't want these things. But we don't realize that it is our egotism or ego which makes us feel, or makes us, puts us in this precarious position, and we get confused, our vision is clouded, and then we start fearing. And as we grow old, as death approaches, the third klesha, or the third pain bearing obstruction, becomes more prominent, and that is clinging to life. And then we suddenly realize, what have we done? And one fine day, even though we find people around us just vanishing, dying one after another, we think uh, we will be living eternally. That is what Kathopanishad, the Upanishad, tells us. So here, Sri Ramakrishna says, all your sorrows, all your troubles cease when this asmita or the I-ness dies. But one has to understand, and that's why we try to discuss in the Vedanta, in the science of human possibilities, that along with the other possibilities, human possibilities of skill development, of career development, and of positive energy and doing, running about doing things, we also have to understand the possibilities which make us free from these sorrows. And Sri Ramakrishna says it doesn't happen unless there is grace of God. If by the grace of God a man realizes somehow, either Swamiji says we can realize it quicker through pain than pleasure. If lot of difficulties or sorrows come, then we start questioning. Then we start questioning that is it a good choice to make, to like certain things, dislike certain things, because ultimately we are not going to get it. Then he says he has nothing to fear. Then that Abhinivesha goes. He becomes a Jivan Mukta because he simply gives up the ego which was causing the problem, which was giving rise to all the sorrow. And then he gives another beautiful example. He says, Maya or this ego is like a cloud. The sun is not visible if there is even a small patch of cloud. So that those clouds are constantly coming in our mental horizon. And as soon as the cloud passes, goes away, we can see the sun. And it's not that the sun was not there, it was always there. The eternal existence, the eternal consciousness, which makes us eternal, and the eternal bliss, which will never make us unhappy or sorrowful, that was always there. But he says, by the grace of the Guru, if the feeling of I-ness, the ego vanishes, then one sees God. That means one removes all the barriers that prevent from the divine joy or the divine bliss to manifest itself. And then finally, we'll conclude with one example. He says, he gives Sri Ramchandra, the Lord himself, which is represented by the Satchidananda Brahman or the Ishvara or the Purusha in different systems of philosophy. Ramchandra himself was just 2.5 cubits away from Lakshmana. But Maya in the form of Sita stood between them. When in Ramayana, if you see the description as given by Valmiki, when Rama was leading the way, Sita was in between and Lakshmana was behind just to protect her. So in the front it was Rama, and behind it was Lakshmana, and Sita was in between. So there was a barrier, and Lakshmana could not see Rama if because the path was narrow. Sita would cover most of the portions uh, and the view which Lakshmana had of Rama. So he could not. The Lakshmana is like the individual soul. The individual soul cannot see the Lord because of Maya, and that Maya is Sita is the representation or personification of Maya. So if the by the grace of Sita, the grace of, they say, grace of Radha, Krishna can be seen. So we need the grace of Shakti or the grace of the Lord, because he comes in the form of Shakti, Avidya, Vidya Maya, and removes that obstruction, the pain bearing obstructions, which are Patanjali does not believe in a God, but he believes in Maya in different forms. He says these are the 5 kleshas: avidya, smita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. So in Raj Yoga, we take a lot of time trying to discuss these aspects, because without understanding that, we cannot understand what yoga is, what samadhi is, what pratyahara. All these things depend on the simple thing which Sri Ramakrishna is telling here, the egoism, the ego that creates the pain bearing obstructions. So, similarly, Sri Ramakrishna takes a towel and he says, I am creating a barrier in front of my face with this hand towel. You cannot see me, though I am so near. Similarly, God is near to us all. He is residing in the heart. Even then, we cannot see Him because of our own egos, because of the wheel of Maya. An embodied being is the essence of Satchidananda, but because of the Maya, which he equates with ego and with various unreal qualities, the three pain-bearing obstructions which are the which have taken birth from this ego, raga, dvesha, and abhinivesha. Man forgets his own self and goes about chasing these uh, unreal things. And all these unreal things, even these unreal things, Sri Ramakrishna says, changes a person's nature. See, this is such a wonderful psychological concept Sri Ramakrishna is introducing now. Even though it is unreal, the question may ask, the spiritual aspirant may say, if that is unreal, then the real, I have, since the real is always within me, what happens if I just run after money and certain things for a few? It is anyway unreal, so it will go. But Sri Ramakrishna says, no, constantly being in touch with this unreal quality changes a person's nature. So he gives a beautiful humorous example here. He says a man who wears a black bordered dhoti is at once found to hum the love songs of Nidu, or he begins to play cards, or automatically picks up a stick to go for a walk. I think in those days, the aristocratic Bengal, a black bordered dhoti was a sign of aristocracy. I don't know, it may be the case. And only people who have this who are proud that they are aristocrats, have a lot of wealth, they just, and they are very running after the things of the world. They are pleasure seeking in their approach. So the love songs of Nidu, maybe Nidu was a singer who was popular in those days, who wrote these romantic songs. So naturally, he says, the moment you wear a black dhoti, a black bordered dhoti, one becomes worldly. One has a tendency to become worldly. And he says he starts humming the love songs of Nidu, or he maybe plays cards as the aristocratic people do, or automatically picks up a stick to go for a walk. These are all status symbols. Even a sickly person begins to whistle as soon as he puts on English boots. English boots were supposed to be, because they were ruling we were enslaved people, and people believed, as they believe even today, that wearing English clothes, wearing English boots makes you a superior race. So Swami Vivekananda also used to make fun of this. So Sri Ramakrishna has observed these things. The moment a person puts English, in those days, when he puts on these English boots, when he climbs his stairs, he jumps from one step to another like an Englishman. If a man is holding a pen in his hand, he begins to scribble the moment he finds a piece of paper. And then he says money is also a great upadhi. As soon as money comes, he becomes totally different. The ego makes him totally different. The transformation of character is as real. Though these things are unreal, the transformation in the character is absolutely real. So one has to be careful of these unreal things, because unreal qualities, unreal things can change a person's nature, and that can be harmful. So uh, then there are many examples. We'll discuss it in the next class. So if there are some questions, then you can